It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We got plenty of fun stuff to talk about today. We have a really sad story to talk about today. There is a little bit of everything for everyone. Football, basketball. Tomorrow, Anthony, we're going to do a little baseball. Are you here tomorrow? You're here tomorrow before you leave, right? Or is today your last day?
Today is my last day, sadly.
Wait, no. I need you to be here tomorrow.
Oh, no. You trying to play a game?
I am trying to play a game.
Ah.
Or do we have Toby come in and play the game today?
I guess we could play it at
6:30. We might have to text Toby because, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nothing says it's almost national season like our annual game of Is That Guy a Washington National?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll work on that. But, by the way, I guess the Nats, as I get a buzz on my phone, I guess the Nats and Phillies are about to get started in spring training action. Opening day, Thursday, we'll be live at Tap 99 down the street here in Navy Yard, right across from the center field entrance of the ballpark. So come hang out, say what's up. Please try to do that during commercial break, the saying what's up part, because I'm very ADD. And I know we do this bit every time we talk about a live show, and then inevitably someone tries to talk to me during the show. I did have someone come up at the last Wizards game and be like, hey, are you in commercial break? And I was like, yes. He's like, okay, I just want to say hi, but I know that I can't do that during the show. And I was like, thank you for paying attention. 10 minutes or so from now, we're going to get into the sad story of the day, which is JuJu Watkins' injury last night. Anthony texted me, as he usually does in the morning, saying, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, honestly, I'm pretty bummed out right now. So we'll tackle that in 10 minutes. Later on in the show, Robbie Hummel will join us. We're also going to play some pretty extended cuts from Kevin Sheehan's interview with Kevin Willard because it was really good and really interesting on both the game winner front, but also kind of the state of the program. So we'll get to that later in the show. But we start, Anthony, with where we kind of ended the show yesterday. As we walked out yesterday, we were like, damn. On this TV right up here to my left, I was watching Maryland just fall apart, as in the Lady Terps. Absolutely fall apart. It's not going well. They were tied, a lot of the third quarter. Then Alabama goes on this run. And actually, it was kind of funny because our What's Trending update at 5:45, I gave a score update. And I said, oh, Maryland's up early third quarter. And then literally by the time we came back from that commercial break, from our What's Trending break, our What's Trending update at 5:45, to the time that we got back at 5:50, Maryland had lost the lead because they had given up a 13-2 run, I believe it was, at that point. And they ultimately, late in the third quarter, Anthony, trailed by 17.
Yeah, they did.
And that was kind of the state of play as or at least as I left yesterday, right? So we say goodbye, we depart, and next thing you know, in terms of the Craig and Anthony communications, I send you the final score and went, wait, what happened? At which point you tell me, yeah, as you were starting to walk out and leave and you were driving home, they came back. And I was like, yeah, I got that part because they won in double overtime. What point now, I went back and watched this today because obviously I was driving home and missed it. By the way, something that might have an announcement on whether you can check out the game on the old radio when you're driving on Friday, the game against South Carolina. We might have some more information on that at some point. I probably said too much there, but when it's official, it's official. The point is, Anthony, when as you were finishing up the podcast and everything that you were working on yesterday, did you see out of the corner of your eye like, oh, they're starting to come back here?
Yeah, so I want to say to close the third, they made it a little interesting. And then I sat here for, I want to say, like the first 4 minutes of the fourth, and we kept, getting closer and closer. But every time we got closer, they would respond with a run of their own. So I'm like, man, I think they're just going to continue to go back and forth. So I ended up leaving. I want to say I got in my car there was probably 5 minutes left to go in the game. And I'm listening to it on the ride home. And I just couldn't believe it, to be honest. And then when I got home, they were in the first overtime.
I will say, as I pulled up the game on the ESPN app to watch this at home today, my complaints from the start of the show yesterday about the length of college basketball games still stand. Because I fast-forwarded to try to get to the start of the fourth quarter. So I went pretty far into the broadcast, and I was already in the second overtime. So I rewind. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, nope, still in the first.
It was lengthy.
The fourth quarter and overtime, Anthony, took half of the total time of the game. It was like 59 minutes. I was like, I got to watch. I didn't budget an hour for this. Oh my. So we still got that. But I think the thing that was really like amazing about watching it is it was this series of mini runs that really got them back in the fourth quarter. There wasn't necessarily a huge uninterrupted run. They'd score maybe 4-6 points in a row, then Alabama would get a bucket. 4-6 points in a row, Alabama would get a bucket. You start to add those up and like, okay, maybe it's like a 16-6 run or something like that. I didn't go back and double check the actual numbers, but it never was a point where you're like, oh, wow, Maryland is making a huge run here. They just constantly were a little bit better in short bursts, and Alabama did enough to like kind of keep them at arm's length, but it just kept getting closer and closer and closer and closer as Sellers and Tibiasu just start hitting shot after shot after shot. But then Sarah Ashley Barker would hit a three or get a layup or do whatever and stem it for a second. And it was never like, sometimes when you overcome leads like that, you have these like snowball effects. And I think that was the thing that was in some ways really impressive about how Maryland did this yesterday was there was never a point where if you're Alabama, you're like, oh my God, this is out of control. You just keep looking up at the scoreboard being like, damn, objects in mirror are closer than they appear.
Yeah, pretty much, man. And when I say Maryland was going on the runs, granted they were going on the runs, but Alabama would just respond with a three or an and one, and it's just like, God dang, are they going to close the deficit like any closer? And then finally, Seller, she hits a three to cut it to four, and after that, it was just, back and forth. It was just so good, so good. And even the last possession of regulation was a little crazy. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my God, that was insane. That was absolutely ridiculous. Just a bad ball that turns into a desperation three that you hit, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's how we drew it up. But like, I guess that was a good way to phrase that, Anthony. It was like they'd always just hit something because it was like during Maryland's run, Alabama would hit a bucket, but Alabama could never get consecutive buckets. Like they could never go on a run to respond. Like so often basketball is a game of dueling runs.
Yeah.
And where Maryland would go on a mini run, Alabama would stem it. Mini run, stem it. And Alabama never even had like a 6 points in a row stretch in that fourth quarter where they were able to extend that lead back out to double digits. So it just kept shrinking a little bit, a lot. It was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the thing is, the forward was Maryland inching forward towards Alabama, and then ultimately they're able to do it, get what they needed to in the end, force overtime, survive first overtime, win in the second overtime. Excellent defense on the final possession, by the way, to not let the ball into Barker's hands. And by the way, salute to Sarah Ashley Barker. What a performance for her. 45 points. Now, she did have 11 turnovers, but her ability to get to her right hand and just, it didn't seem to matter who was in front of her, just blow by was incredible all game. And then in one of the biggest possessions of the game, 3:29 to go in the second overtime, she gets downhill to her right again and picks up, it's kind of a squirrely charge, a very college-y charge call, I'll call it, Anthony.
Yeah.
On Kubek draws it, credit to her. She got the call. And at that point, that was the little bit of separation that Maryland needed to close that off. That was an incredible game, an all-time classic. But unfortunately, the biggest story in women's college basketball yesterday was the injury to JuJu Watkins. Just how big is it for USC, for the title chase, for the sport writ large? We'll talk about it next on The Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Commanders Vibe Check. We're a month from the NFL Draft. How you feeling? We'll check in with you coming up at 4:30. Or honestly, I'm good to talk about the state of how you feeling about this NCAA Women's Tournament, which got turned on its head last night in the absolute worst way. Woke up this morning and my wife checks her phone and she just goes, "Oh no. JuJu got hurt last night." And I was like, "Oh man, I knew she had a bad ankle. Like, you sure that's old?" She's like, "No, this is a new post." And then I was like, "Dang, that sucks. Hopefully she's all right." And then 2 minutes later, roll over, open my phone, and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't realize it was ACL." And she goes, "What?" Because we had seen two different posts, and that was how I started my day. Just an absolutely terrible thing to happen in such a high-profile moment, in such a high-profile game. JuJu Watkins, the presumptive National Player of the Year of women's college basketball, according to ESPN's Shams Charania, tears her ACL as she takes contact on a fast break last night early on in the game for University of Southern California. Her teammates rallied and absolutely blew out their opponent. And this sucks for a million reasons, Anthony. First is just the pure basketball of it all, right? We were 2 games away, 1 win by each team away from JuJu Watkins versus Paige Beckers for a shot at the Final Four. And it's hard to overstate how big of a moment, how big of a game that would be. And the only, in a weird way, it's like, oh, it's so unprecedented. The only precedent we have is last season and the season before. But, like, having the 2 biggest stars in the sport face off in the way that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese did the last couple of years is what we were going to go for, except for, unlike the Caitlin-Angel matchups, these two probably would have been guarding each other. Like, it would have truly been head-to-head. Not only, Anthony, I think, the 2 biggest stars in the sport, there are multiple things you could measure to say that Paige Beckers and JuJu Watkins are the 2 biggest stars in college sports. If you look at social media followings, you look at NIL earnings, if you look at pure notoriety, if I know Cakes did this very silly thing this morning on the Junkies, which I thought was laughable because of how wrong it was, where he said if you took like one of the fat heads of like JuJu Watkins out on the National Mall, how many people would know JuJu Watkins? He's like, not many. I was like, no. A lot of them. Like, more so than any other athlete in college sports. Anthony, if I showed you 2 photos and said, I need you to identify one of these people, would you have a better chance of identifying Cam Ward, who's about to go number 1 in the NFL draft, or JuJu Watkins?
JuJu Watkins, no questions.
Cooper Flagg or JuJu Watkins?
JuJu Watkins, no question.
Okay, is there anybody else that's a bigger name? Travis Hunter or JuJu Watkins?
That one's tough.
That one's tougher. Travis is the Heisman Trophy winner. He's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I would probably still lean JuJu.
Yeah, I would also lean JuJu. JuJu Watkins, featured in the Nike basketball commercial that aired in the Super Bowl. JuJu Watkins, star of her own State Farm commercial. Not your mom and pop insurance company. State Farm, the biggest, or one of the biggest, all due respect to Allstate and Geico and anyone else who could potentially sponsor this show. Companies. Like, she is box office, bro. And she is a star amongst stars in L.A. That is how big JuJu Watkins is. And to know that we are missing out on the tournament having that kind of star power. That as long as those two players were playing, we were guaranteed to have one of them in the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
And two, on just the pure basketball side of it, I know probably a lot of people, actually, I think more people probably know JuJu Watkins than have actually watched her play, in part because she plays on the West Coast, like locally, maybe not nationally, but locally. People will be like, oh, yeah, she's the USC basketball player. She got the bun, right?
Yep.
Like, she's in the Nike commercials, right? She's State Farm? Yeah, her. But, like, actually having watched her play, she plays a bunch of her games at 10 o'clock at night. So, unless you're a sicko and you have a late night schedule, yeah, Anthony. Me, I haven't watched as much of JuJu as I have, say, Paige, because Paige plays in the Eastern time zone, and I go to sleep at 10 o'clock every night. As I was texting with one of my college basketball friends earlier today, I was like, 10 o'clock is bedtime, not tip time. This was a chance for JuJu. I mean, even last night, this happens overnight for most folks.
Yeah.
Right? This is a 10 o'clock game. She gets hurt a couple minutes into it. The news breaks at like 3 in the morning or whatever it is, East Coast time. This is an overnight story that we all wake up to devastated today. And we were one game away from her playing in more reasonable windows and bigger audiences, and a lot more people seeing, oh my God, watching JuJu Watkins play basketball is incredible. And it also sucks because, like, record pursuits, things like that, this might be the difference. Depending on how much time she misses next year, this might be the difference in Caitlin Clark staying the all-time leading scorer or not in NCAA basketball history, because JuJu was very much on pace to break it. And then, as I mentioned, like, watching Paige Beckers go absolutely bonkers last night, 34 points, 4 assists, 4 steals in 29 minutes, and that doesn't even really begin to describe how dominant she was in that game. Knowing that we were that close to seeing those two, possibly the next 2 number 1 overall picks in the WNBA draft, if not 2 of the next 3, depending on how long JuJu stays. That just sucks, man. It sucks for all of us. Nevertheless, how much it sucks for her on a human level to have to deal with that injury, which obviously surpasses all of that.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off like what you're saying, like, the worst part of sports is injuries. Like, you really can't control it. And it's like super unfortunate that it does happen to one of the best in college basketball. But yes, everybody was definitely anticipating that matchup between her and Paige, and her just accomplishing so much more the next couple of years. So I think we sort of kind of do take a step back, in terms of what she's been able to bring to the game and things of that nature. But I think this also is a chance for, to continue to grow women's sports. Again, like, even building off what Caitlin Clark did last year. This year, the TV ratings and things are up, and it's only going to continue to go up. So it does suck, and it is super unfortunate. But I think this is just a minor setback, and, she's going to bounce back from this.
For sure. And she'll inspire a whole bunch of people. Like, there will be little girls and little boys who see JuJu come back from this. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, January, February next year feels like about the right time, about 9, 10 months from now, when she'll probably be getting back on the floor. Who are like, I watched you go through this, and I know that I could get through my injury, and specifically maybe an ACL injury. And unfortunately, specifically on the women's side of it, there is an ACL epidemic. It's worse in soccer than it is in basketball, but there is a ton of ACL issues. And this was just a super unfortunate, like, there's some contact, but, her knee just crumples, and it hit just right / just wrong, and this happened. But I will rebound off what you just said, Anthony, in a way that I think actually is a good thing for women's sports. And I kind of make it my mission as someone who does talk a lot about women's sports to try not to be existential about it, right? I'm not sitting here trying to preach and convince anybody. I'm just talking about sports that I love watching.
Yeah.
Like, women's sports are not a charity. I'm not trying to do charity work. I'm talking about one of the best basketball players on earth. I'm talking about some of the best basketball on earth, which is why we watch it. And with that said, there was, for so many years, really until like the last 2 or 3, there was always this underlying fear of, like, if something happens, a big star goes down, there's a big scandal, whatever, that it threatens basically the entire existence of the sport. I don't worry about that anymore, which is great. And especially like women's college now is so much more equal to the men's side. And, depending on the year, there's going to be bigger ratings for women's games than men's games. And the championship game last year, the women's game surpasses the men's game for the first time ever. Thanks in large part to Caitlin. But as you said, it's been a record viewership year this season, post Caitlin, for ESPN on the women's side. But I genuinely, like, there's still issues that are specific to women's sports and some of the power struggles and, when there's abuse scandals and things like that tend to happen on the women's side way more than the men's, and those are huge problems. But I worry much less that, oh my God, Paige versus JuJu is not going to happen. What does this mean for the health of the sport? It's not nothing, but it's very little. At least we are at a point where I'm just bummed out that I don't get to watch the game. And like, I'm obviously way more sad for JuJu and her family and, knowing how tough ACL rehab is to go through, knowing that she's going to have to go through this very painful, literally and figuratively process. But I am at least given some relief, I guess, that one, we know how to do ACL recovery and rehab now. I feel great about her ability to come back and be every bit of the player she was ever going to be. And that's a phenomenal thing that for her, this injury happens at this point in human history where we know what we know about ACL rehab, and that's great. And that this isn't something where this injury is robbing us anything more than an opportunity. The existential survival of the sport isn't going to die because we don't get Paige versus JuJu. And I look forward to them squaring off in the future in the WNBA. So at least we got that going for us.
Nah, for sure.
Which is nice.
And I'm not going to lie, Craig. It's funny because when you were talking about, people paying attention more to maybe the women's game than the men's game, my dad was I was on the phone with my dad when it actually happened. And he was like, really, man? I've been paying way more attention to the women's game than the dudes game. I was like, I think that's just, the trajectory of like sports kind of thing. Like, it's entertaining and it's good that, women are finally getting this opportunity.
For sure. And, there's a lot of factors that go into that. And let's carry this over next. 301-230-0980 if you want to get in on it. But like why we've arrived at this point and also what opportunities may exist now, specifically for a player that I am very interested to see how she responds to this for Mystics reasons. So we'll continue this conversation next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. So we're just talking about the terrible news that went down last night, the terrible thing that went down last night with JuJu Watkins tearing her ACL, the USC star guard. But it's, you know, how does her team respond for that? If we talk about how this affects the title race, Anthony, if USC is going to play like this, they going to be all right. They beat the ever-loving mess out of Mississippi State, bro. They won their first game against UNC Greensboro. Granted, it was a 116, but they won it 71-25. And you think, like, okay, it's 116. They won last night without JuJu Watkins for the better part of 35 minutes in this game because she got hurt relatively early. 96-59.
Yeah. And it was actually worse than that. In the fourth quarter, they took their foot off the gas a little bit.
As one does.
They were getting after them.
Yeah. What, belt to butt?
Yeah. It was a lot of belt to butt. Because Kiki, she really, I guess she knew that, since Juju's out, she had to, take the step forward, just like she did last year when she was at Stanford, or the years she was at Stanford. She had to be the person out there that's going to be the enforcer, grab every rebound, get a lot of buckets and things of that nature. And I think she just did a great job of asserting herself. So she's going to have to play like that if she wants to give USC a chance. And then, the role players are going to step up as well.
Which was exactly what I wanted to talk about from the Mystics side of this. Michael Vopel of ESPN put out his latest mock draft. And at one is Paige. She's going to Dallas for right now, although there's a lot of hubbub about whether she'll actually want to play for Dallas or will she pull basically an Eli Manning and be like, no. Then you have Olivia Miles, the guard out of Notre Dame, going 2. And then the Mystics are up 3rd, and there's been a lot of different players that have been mocked 3 throughout this process to Washington, or actually to 3 in general. 4 initially was Washington. They now have that 3rd pick thanks to the trade with Chicago for Ariel Atkins, and they've got Kiki Iriafen going, who I think started the season kind of as the number 2 prospect behind Paige. They've got Kiki Iriafen. The name gets seemingly pronounced differently on every broadcast, so I apologize to Kiki. And if you're a Mystic or if you're not, I should learn how to properly say your name. But she is now 3rd. And last night in this game, 36 points, season high. And there was also just Michael writes about how she took control of the game. That when JuJu goes down, imagine how frazzled you must be in that moment. Lindsey Gottlieb, the coach at Southern Cal, talked about how she was upset and had to try to pull it together for her players in the huddle after seeing JuJu go down, and she's in tears, like she's getting wheeled off or getting carried off, and then ultimately wheeled in the back. It's a devastating thing to see happen to your best player, nevertheless your friend, someone who you built your program around. If you're Gottlieb. And Iriafen is able to not brush that off, but able to compartmentalize it, or to whatever extent she did, or use it as motivation, or just seize the opportunity, saying, all right, we need someone to step up and take over the way that JuJu typically takes over. And she did it. And I think it's an interesting fit with the Mystics specifically because they've got Shakira, they've got Aaliyah. How many bigs do you need? But also, if all 3 of them are super skilled and all can shoot from range, all can rebound, all can handle, they can do a little bit of everything, why not just take the best player available and figure it out? And, of course, they could make another trade or something like that too. But very, very interesting idea to say, even though the 2 best youngest players remaining on the Mystics are bigs, shoot, if Iriafen goes out and finishes this tournament strong, I mean, she's going to have a huge challenge if they win this next game. They face UConn, and Sarah Strong, who's the National Player of the Year, in 3 years from now, 4 years from now, will be the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft in 2029 or whatever the hell year that'll be. If she goes out and dominates her and helps even push USC close to a Final Four, nevertheless, if she gets them there, I mean, then we're all of a sudden, I think, talking about her in the mix at 2 and not even getting to 3.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting just because I feel as though Aaliyah Edwards and Kiki are sort of kind of the same player. Well, at least the Aaliyah Edwards we saw at Unrivaled anyway. We've never seen Aaliyah's bag unlocked, until the one-on-one tournament, but we know that she has more in her bag. So I think it'll be interesting, but I think at the same token, like you can never have like too many bigs. To be honest, like I don't think you can.
Yeah, too many tall, powerful, strong athletes that have multi-faceted skill sets.
Yeah.
You find a way to figure that out. That said, they obviously need some shooting too. One player who's not going to be available for the Mystics to select in the first round is the hometown kid. AZ Fudd is going back to Connecticut. Very interesting choice, and I think this is 1,000% the NIL era coming to be, Anthony, because it used to be like, hey, you're a first-round pick and you've got an injury history, go get your bag right now. And not that the WNBA, unfortunately, has enormous bags to offer that's about to double in size next year. And maybe that's something, too, that maybe they're not talking about is the rookie contracts in 2026 are going to look a little different than the rookie contracts in 2025 because if you're unaware, the WNBA CBA is expiring after this season, and this is going to be the first one that they've signed with the new TV money in, and they're going to get paid. Yeah. Like everyone's going to get paid double what they're getting right now, if not more, depending on the player and the situation. But they are, AZ Fudd, is going to make probably a couple $1 million at UConn next year.
Yeah.
Stan. So what's the point of leaving? And she had a conversation with Gino Auriemma, and apparently Gino was like, look, I'll support you either way. But I think if you leave, you will eventually look back and be like, I didn't do everything I could do in a UConn uniform. That you didn't do everything you set out to do. And so even though she and Paige are very tight, and Beckers is very clear that she is leaving, even though she actually could go back for another, what feels like 17th year at UConn, AZ Fudd's going back. So there's one of the best shooters in the draft off the board, and someone that would have been a lot of fun to have in D.C. as she's from the area.
Yeah, I saw her put out on Instagram that she was coming back, and she also said like she wants to unlock something else in her game.
Yeah.
And I think slowly but surely as the season's gone on, as she's gotten healthier, she's been able to, tap into some of that bag. Most of us know her as a shooter, but guess what? She's also a great defender.
Yep.
She can also get downhill, and she can also play make as she did last game. So I think that's more so like what she wants to do. And to be honest, I think she's probably going to want to go out there and get that National Player of the Year.
She's going to challenge for it.
Because she's a former, number one player in the women's game coming out of high school. So at the same token, I think she knows like who she is. I think she knows what she can be and what her ceiling is. So, or I guess like pushing towards her ceiling.
I think she wants to get back to like, I'm the best player in this class. Like,
Yeah.
could she be the number one pick in next year's draft? Like, if she goes out and drops 20 a game and UConn, with her and Sarah Strong as a sophomore and whoever else Gino has floating in and out of that program, could they go win a national title? Like, hell yeah. Or Final Four? Hell yeah. So I think that's definitely going to be interesting to watch. For whatever it's worth, real quick, especially since I'm going to say the Mystics 3 times in this, the current or the full 12 pick mock draft from Vopal at ESPN, Beckers first, Miles second to Seattle, Iriafin third to Washington. Fourth is also Washington, Sonia Citron, guard from Notre Dame. The Valkyries, the new team from Golden State, they get Dominique Malonga, who is a 6'6" center from France who has just crazy upside.
Mm-hmm.
Mystics' third pick, Shia Terp, Cheyenne Sellers.
Ooh.
So 6'2" point guard.
Yeah.
Could you imagine 6'2" point guard? I guess Aaliyah's playing like the 3, Iriafin's playing the 4, Shakira's playing the 5.
It's a big lineup right there.
Yeah.
Switching everything.
Yeah. Anissa Moro, who I think is also a very interesting rebounding machine from LSU. She's going 7 in Connecticut. Another foreign player, Asia Savica, Slovenian forward, goes to Connecticut at 8. Haley Van Lith, back as a first-rounder after her resurgent year at TCU, goes 9 to the Sparks. Georgia Amore, former Virginia Tech, current Kentucky point guard, 10 in Chicago. Sanaya Rivers, NC State. Her and Isaiah James are both borderline first-round prospects. They've got Rivers going 11 to Minnesota, and then Sedona Price, Van Lith's running mate at TCU, the 6'7" center, goes 12th to the Dallas Wings. So
is Lauren Betts not coming out this year?
I feel like I just saw something on her.
I guess she's staying. She's staying.
They are, as is Tanaya Latson, the guard from Florida State.
Gotcha.
So that's in here. Yeah. So Fudd, Betts, and Latson, top prospects for the 26th draft. Flau'jae Johnson is another one to watch.
Oh, for next year?
No, for this year. She's a true junior, so she could come out, and she does turn 22 this year.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. NCAA women / WNBA 3-year rule. It's like the NFL. You
Yeah.
have to be 3 years out of high school. So she could come out if she wants to go early, and she very well might, but she could easily go back for another year to LSU. All right. When we get back, Anthony, do we want to roll? We want to vibe check this? Here, I guess here's what we'll do. We got 2 options. If you want to call in, we're a month from the NFL draft. How you feeling about the Commanders' current status a month from the draft? 301-230-0980. But we are going to get back to the Terps, Lady Terps big win. So if we don't have any calls, Brenda Fries was with Sheehan earlier. We'll play you a couple of cuts from that, and then Christy Winters Scott's going to join us at 5 o'clock. Coming up in 10 minutes, Christy Winters Scott, Maryland legend, talking about her alma mater's big win yesterday. Speaking of her alma mater, speaking of big wins, Kevin Willard was on with Sheehan earlier today and was unbelievable, talking about the sequence that led to Derek Queen's game winner, as well as his own future with Maryland. Kevin pressed him, was like, "Are you staying?" And he gave kind of an answer. And he's like, no. Are you staying? And so you got to hear that exchange coming up. Anthony, 6 o'clock hour? Or are we getting that 5:30? When are we doing that?
6 o'clock hour. We're going to do Take Command at 5:30.
Okay, so we get a little football in coming up at 5:30. But right now, let's set the table for talking to Christy, because Kevin, Mr. Sheehan, was working turtle overtime today. He also had Brenda Freese on to talk about the Lady Terps' big win yesterday that we opened the show talking about today, and asked her about a couple of different things. First and foremost, what was she telling her team when the Terps were down 17 yesterday to Alabama?
Just encouragement, trying to, give as much positivity, confidence that, just we didn't have to do it all in one shot. It, had to come down to getting a stop, then a score, and understanding just, valuing the possessions. And, credit to the resiliency of these kids. I mean, they fought, they battled, they believed, and, just a huge turnaround in that game.
It was, and I think you could see that as well. Like, you could see, I don't want to say you could see the resilience, but you could see them not panicking. There was never a point where they were forcing things. Like, there was and that's a fine line in sports, I think, Ant, is like, what's the difference between having a sense of urgency and panicking? Panicking is out of control. Panicking is we got to start chucking threes. Panicking is all of these things that don't lead to productive basketball. And Maryland never did that stuff. Like, they were still, getting into the paint, get 1 foot. The other thing I love about Maryland, like, all these kids think floaters are awesome now, especially in the men's game. It's an epidemic in the men's game.
Yeah.
But in the women's game too, like, drive and it's the analytics driven threes or layups, and it's like, I got to get to the rim. Oh no, I'm too close. I can't get a layup. Floater. And Maryland has a bunch of guards that are willing to be like, if I get 2 steps inside the 3-point line and I'm wide open and in rhythm, and there's a big that's floating around the rim, I'm just going to take the pull-up. And so they started knocking down these mid-range shots, and they're good shots. They're in rhythm. They're shots they can clearly make because they did. And they hit a couple of those. Then, they start to step out, a little bit extra help, bang, kick out threes. They start getting the ball moving, a little bit more rotation. So they hit a bunch of shots of a bunch of different varieties. But I think the defining run, or the defining characteristic in so many ways of that run that Maryland made, was they got good shots. And so often when teams are down big, especially in a do or die situation, like, they weren't down 17 in a regular season game. They're down 17 where if they don't come back, game's over, or season's over.
Yeah, they have 13 minutes left in their season, man.
And they were able to put it together.
They were. And to be honest, I credit, Brenda Freese as well, because you just talk about panicking. She was very calm, very encouraging, like, clapping her teammates up like, all right, timeout. Let's figure things out. Let's calm down. We got, 13 more minutes left in our season. Like, she was very positive as opposed to, somebody else. Like, me, I'm not going to lie. If my team is down 17, Craig, I need to do say something that's going to ignite some fire.
Would you break a clipboard?
No, I'm not breaking the clipboard.
You wouldn't Steve Kerr it?
No, I wouldn't. But I'm just saying I would have did or said something that wasn't going to be, calming and, positive. And maybe that's why I'm not coaching, and she is. And she's been doing this for, years and years. And she has over 800 wins, like, in her career. Shout out to her. But
I think Coach Freese knows what she's doing.
Yeah, I think so too.
Facts. Anthony still trying to figure it out. Coach Freese got it under control, and she was calm when she needed to be, but she also, like, big defensive possessions. Like, she got the crowd fired up. It's great shots by ESPN and the camera work they were doing. And so ultimately, this incredible win gets them back to the Sweet 16. And Kevin asked Brenda Freese where this win ranks for her in those 800 whatever that she's got.
Oh, well, first of all, I've got to say this weekend was Maryland madness at
Yes.
the highest level for both teams. And you are right. You kind of forget about the body of work and that many games. And clearly, I've been really fortunate to be a part of some special wins, that overtime win and the national championship game. And but this one, ranks right up there. I mean, it had all the feels, the emotions, the highs, the lows, being down 17 to coming back and the double overtime, and just can't say enough about the resiliency of this group.
And that resiliency ultimately ended in a win that sends them to the Sweet 16. That game Friday, 5 o'clock against defending national champions South Carolina. Good luck. It is going to be tough. Should be a lot of fun. Great players on the floor all around. That game Friday, 5 o'clock. I think it's an ESPN game. Might be ESPN2. Check your local listings for details. We're talking about it more, and we'll also continue to talk about the rest of the NCAA tournament with Christy Winters Scott, the Maryland basketball legend and NCAA women's hoops analyst, as well as, of course, Wizards analyst. Joins us next here on The Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. We'll take command for you a little later this hour. So some commanders. We got some of Kevin Willard's chat with Kevin Sheehan later on in the show. So we have a whole bunch of stuff. But our top story today, oh man, for the second straight day, it is a thrilling Maryland win, this time by the ladies. And it's time to talk about it with one of the Terps' very best ever.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Christy Winters Scott is with us. Of course, the Maryland legend, women's hoops analyst for a variety of networks. Of course, she's also the Mystics color analyst. You also see her on Wizards coverage. Basically, she's a basketball savant. Christy, hello, ma'am. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Thank you. How are you?
I am good. What a day to be someone who talks about Maryland.
How about that?
Look, we don't do a ton of college basketball on this show. We major in pro basketball and certainly the NFL. But with what Maryland has done the last 2 days, I know how much it means to so many folks around here. For you, especially watching yesterday, like it's fun and all to watch the men's team and what they did over the weekend. So you have that high going into the game. And then you get to see your alma mater, your program, Coach Freeze, do that 17-point comeback. Just take me through your emotions and what you're thinking watching this unfold yesterday.
Are you sure you want all of that? Because you know how wiggly I can get, especially in games like that. But wow, listen. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on that. But with Brenda Freeze and how she is able to build the mentality in each of her players, whether they get on the court or not, but they are resilient. They are so tough-minded that even 17 down in the third quarter, there was no quit, there was no letdown, there was no give in. It was a push through. It was, we can still do this. There's time on the clock. And that's how every single player played the game. Not just throughout regulation, obviously, but in the 2 overtime sessions. I mean, it was a commitment to grit. And that's what, it's one of my favorite quotes, commit to grit. And that's exactly what they did on the court. And, I was watching her. I know the game was unfolding, but I believe it was Poffenbarger on the free throw line. No, it was Kubik at the free throw line towards the end, and I think she missed the first one.
Yep.
And they had a shot of Brenda, and she said out loud, "See it in." That's what it looked like, she said. And then while she was in her shot, like getting the dribbles, getting ready to take that next free throw, I was watching Brenda, and she was clapping. And I think she knew that next one was going in. And so that's just, for me, a microcosm of the belief that she has in how she's leading the team, but also the belief in how she has prepared them, and they've trusted in that preparedness and executed regardless of the situations of adversity, with Bree McDaniel going down earlier in the season, all the things, Cheyenne Sellers going down, a couple times throughout the season, but still remaining in games and remaining impactful, and she just was magnificent as her senior shy self has been all season long. So I think it's just it was the resilience for me, but the ebbs and flows of the March Madness of it all, especially in the overtime sessions.
Oh yeah.
I was unnerved about 5 times in 5 seconds. But they found a way to dig it out. And for that, I mean, it's inspiring basketball wise, but I think, for me, it's always going to be, the character is displayed in moments like that. And, the life lessons that all of them will learn from grinding through the game like that is going to be something special as the years unfold in front of them. But I think if you're watching it just in general, I think the fight that they displayed was inspiring for life reasons also. So
yeah, no, for sure. And so as you obviously coached for a long time, and you got the player background, you sat in these games as a neutral analyst trying to have to keep your head through amidst the chaos. You've called March Madness for ESPN for a long time. So when you're watching because lots of March Madness games are up and down. They're high strung. Your season's on the line. But this game was particularly turbulent. That last possession of regulation where Maryland gets the tie, like that is not how Brenda Freeze drew that up. So you have that chaos that works out for you. Then in the overtime, you have one of your best free throw shooters miss a free throw and then foul their best player as basically time expires to send that thing to double overtime. How do you think Brenda was talking to her team in those moments through the turbulence to make sure that they could ultimately come out on top?
Well, I'm sure she wasn't saying what I was saying when all this was happening. Because, listen, I was having a time. But, we're removed from it. But at the same time, I was like, oh, my God, what is happening right now? But I think, she had to have said something to keep them composed because that's how they played, right? And I think that's what the best coaches do in those moments of chaos, right? She knows that it's chaotic, it's up and down, like what just happened, and you can't fix what has already transpired, right? The only thing you could fix or try to execute is what's in front of you. Another life lesson right there for everyone. But I just think it had to have been, hey, we already know that wasn't a great choice right there to do that on the three, fouling the three-point shooter and getting in the air on that. But, hey, we're not going to sit there and waste half the time out talking about how wrong that was. We understand that. We're moving on. Like, that's a look at the player and say, kind of lean your head to the side like you know better, and maybe not even say that, but like non-verbally say that to save all the time that you need to prepare for the next thing. So I think it's, you got to have amnesia for those things that happen behind you. We're not going to sit on that and begrudge the situation that was negative, that kind of hampered us right there for sure. But what are we going to do next? Like, how are we going to win? And I think that is the verbiage that each of the players on the court and everyone else on the bench absorbed and embraced in that moment. And that's why they were able to come out and win, because there was a plan in place for the next play. And I think that's what you saw there from Brenda Freeze and the team.
Christy Winters Scott's with us, of course, basketball analyst for Monumental Sports, amongst others. She also, of course, had a very successful and storied career at Maryland herself. And we're talking about the Terps' victory yesterday. The end of that game, obviously, they're able to get the nice defensive stop. You get the moment to celebrate. Hoorah. You get all the hoopla afterwards. It's great because it's at Xfinity Center. And then all of a sudden you look up and you go, oh, right, we have to play South Carolina on Friday. How do you begin to wrap your head around that task and the high? I mean, first, before we get to the we can get into the specifics of South Carolina in a second, Christy.
Yeah.
But much more generally in the NCAA tournament, how do you try to wrap your head around? We should celebrate these wins; they're big, important moments. But then eventually, there is more to do. Just a couple of days later.
Oh no, you have to celebrate those moments, right? And I think that's why I keep saying life lessons, but I swear. It's exactly why I love sports, especially basketball, because, if you don't celebrate those moments, who knows if you'll get another one. And I'm not saying that in a negative way about the next game or the next game after that or the next two after that. I just think that you have to be where your feet are in terms of everything that you're doing, right? And it's not get right to the next thing, which I'm sure they got right to film after they had the celebration in the locker room, right? But there's no way you're going to have that kind of win and say, good job, okay, Friday we have this, and in the next breath. That just cannot, that's not healthy, number one. You have to celebrate what you just did. You ran through the tape, you hear me? So you have to let that marinate with how you did it, not necessarily that it happened, but how you did that, right? And celebrate the fact that you did all of what you needed to do. Every player stepped up, every player contributed, whether it was statistical or emotional. Everybody did that, and that's how you lead into the next game with that kind of energy and force. And it's always going to be the approach for me mentally to any game, but especially in March Madness, that you have to go in with. So you got to celebrate it. You can't brush it under the rug or whatever and saying that was all right, but now we have the next thing, 5 minutes later. No, I hope they celebrated that night, and I hope they dropped their shoulders out of their ears and just understood exactly what it took to do that, because they're going to need to bottle that up and pour it out several more times ahead. So for me, I'm always a proponent of, celebrate the moment, be there where you are with your teammates that you fought hard with your coaching staff, that you prepared and saw the game plan and the blueprint be executed like that, right? And even though there were broken plays and the ebbs and flows of it all, I think it's fair to say that, everyone in the locker room that from the video I saw, was really enjoying the fact of how they won, not necessarily that they won. But for me, it's always going to be that, have your moment and bask in that glow for a moment, and then carry that same great energy moving forward.
Christy Winters Scott with us here on the Hoffman Show. So then we get to eventually the party's over. You get back to work, and South Carolina's ahead. It's the most talented roster in the sport. Dawn's one of the best coaches in the sport. They are the defending champions for a reason. How do you go? There is a blueprint to beat them. Connecticut did it. This is not an undefeated South Carolina team like last year. What has to happen for Maryland to keep this thing close and give themselves a chance against the defending champs?
You know what? That's such a great question, and I know a lot of teams this year have not found the answer for that. But the teams who have found an answer for that, they've put a lot of pressure on the rim. I think they've really tried to use the aggressive style of defense up the line that Dawn likes to present defensively, try to use that against them and get some backdoor kind of Princeton-y kind of offense set against them and spread them out a little bit. But, obviously they've made adjustments to how they didn't win a couple of games this year. So we'll see if those adjustments hold true. But I think the biggest issue or hurdle I see in this game for Maryland is not necessarily tactical. Okay. I think it's more so based on the fact that South Carolina, they have depth. And with that depth, they come in waves at you. I mean, they have Malaysia Fulali off the bench. She's like, she would start anywhere else, and I think, they have Joyce also on the inside who comes off the bench for them, and she's a freshman, but she plays big minutes. And those two players in particular for me are the ones that I circle as being like the major issues. And in terms of not having Bree McDaniel right now, I think that impacts obviously your rotation, but Maryland has been able to adjust because that happened in January, I guess, around that time where they had those 4 games and all that in a row of top 10 teams that they had to face, including Texas, who was also a number 1 seed in the tournament this year. So I think when you look at how Maryland has been able to grind and grit out these wins down the stretch of this regular season and also obviously yesterday's game, they've got to tap into that mentality. I mean, it's got to be, what Cheyenne Sellers said post-game. She said, I didn't want it to be my last game, right? And I kind of saw that in her when she contested that shot in regulation that didn't go in. But if you look at that replay and look at Cheyenne Sellers, she covered her face like, oh my God, thank God it didn't go in. That's what it looked like to me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I just got chills on my arm just remembering what that looked like for me. Right. So the fact that she said that after the game, I think there's going to be obviously a sense of hunger, a sense of focus. Right. And I think the ebbs and flows down the stretch, like those fouls that didn't need to occur. Right. The discipline and, all the things that they need. I think they're going to need to tap into that. And I heard Brenda Freeze a couple of games ago at halftime say, we're not even close. I think it was against Norfolk State in the halftime locker room. She was like, you're not even close to playing how you're capable of playing. So I think since then, they've turned the page to understanding that. And then, you're going to have, they're human. You're going to have ebbs and flows with discipline situation, but you got to be locked in. You got to be focused. Obviously, the margin of error continues to shrink as you move forward in this Sweet 16 space. So they got to be disciplined. They've got to stay on the glass, but they have to be ready for the waves of rotational players that Dawn Staley is going to put on the court. And I think that is going to be the biggest test for Maryland. There may be, some timeouts that aren't based on using the whiteboard. It may be based on we're going to be pressing. We're not going deep into our bench. Everyone's got to be fresh. So this timeout is just to get recharged, and we're going right back out there. So I think that's something that I'm going to be looking for. But, I love Dawn. I love Brenda. And I think it's going to be a chess match in terms of the X's and O's. But I think it's going to come down to the will and the grit and, the resilience that Maryland has tapped into under the adversity of having Bree McDaniel being out and et cetera. But I think they've found a way to win, that they celebrated yesterday, and they got to carry that wave of force right into Friday's game against a really tough South Carolina team.
Christy Winters Scott with us here on the Hoffman Show. And again, if you want more on the Maryland game, we talked about it off the top of the show. Brenda Fries was on with Kevin Sheehan earlier today. Check that out. Christy, I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't touch on the other story. I wish we didn't have to, because the other story out of the women's game last night is just – it's heartbreaking. It's brutal. I don't know all of the words I want to say to capture the depth of sadness here of what we saw where JuJu Watkins goes down last night. I don't know whether you're watching live or you, like me, found out this morning when you woke up. But, how big of a loss is this for the sport and for what we were hoping to see from her the rest of the tournament, and especially the seeming collision course that USC and UConn were on, where we were going to get – for the third straight year, how lucky for us that the two biggest stars in the sport we're going to face off. Angel and Caitlin the last couple of years, and then Paige and JuJu this year. But what was your reaction, I guess, is the easiest way to ask it, as if that's easy, but the easiest way to ask the question of when you saw the news.
Right. I'm going to, try my best not to get emotional, but too late.
I hear you.
I'm brokenhearted for her. The sweetest kid and the most fierce competitor I've seen in a long time. I mean, she's only a sophomore, but, we were on the Wizards postgame show last night and literally walked off the set, and one of the cameramen said they just carried JuJu off the floor, and I was like, no way. Because I just said I'm going to go home and get the second half of the USC game, right? And like the last segment right before we went on air, I was like, talking about that, and for that to happen the way that it happened in the first 4 minutes of the game, I am just, I don't know. I've been depressed all day, to be honest, every time I think about it. And then on social media, it's like, I don't know if I can see that picture of her again, on the ground, like grimacing. My daughter got hurt last year. She's a senior at Georgetown and got injured in the Big East tournament semifinals last year with an ACL. So for me, it's like I feel it on a lot of different levels. Like, I'm worried about how our parents feel, because you feel so helpless. So for me, outside looking in, I feel like I'm inside looking out because of how that happened and what that feels like, emotionally as a parent, where you can't help at all like you want to, and you can't take the pain away from your kid. And I think that's how I saw it first. But then overarching, I hate it for the game, for right now, the trajectory and, just the love that JuJu has garnered over her really short collegiate career so far, and not be able to make it through to the end of this season. And like you said, the crescendo of possibly meeting up, obviously, with UConn, and, her teammates, had to play the rest of the game. I mean, there's so many emotional dynamics of that all. Lindsay Gottlieb, I listened to her post-game presser, and she said, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have to compartmentalize emotionally as a human being what just happened to JuJu, right? And, just thinking of that, too, having to stay locked in and captain your team during that emotional earthquake, and how you just have to manage everyone in that moment. I don't know how that happened for her, how she was able to just navigate emotionally and stay locked into basketball at that moment, right, when you're really worried about your kid. Because, coaches love their kids. You saw Gino in tears at Paige Becker's final press conference. These are human beings who are invested in the lives of these people. So I think on that stage, it's just incredibly depressing and heartbreaking, but also knowing the fierce way that JuJu is going to attack her recovery is the same way she attacked on the court by averaging almost 25 a game as a sophomore, and just a savant, like you used that word, but she is a savant of the game, and did it in a stoic, methodical, disruptive, and just lull you to sleep on roller skate way in terms of how she played the game. And you look up and she has 30. You look up, she has a triple-double, 38, 8 blocks. Like, she was just on really a high level of elite execution. And that, for me, is also heartbreaking because I know she's going to get back to that. But, as an athlete, to be in that kind of flow state in every aspect of the game, and then to have that just, the light flicked off on that immediately, that's just gut-wrenching. And, for me, I just have tears in my eyes like the whole time I'm talking about it right now because you just wish you could fix it, quickly for her. And that she's going to have to go through a lot to get back to where she was, but I have no doubt that she will absolutely get back to that. Paige Beckers has done it. You've seen AZ Fudd go through injuries and come right back and go out there and just be an absolute menace in every way. So I have no question about that. But in this moment, like I said, you have to be where your feet are. Where my feet are right now, I'm incredibly sad. I went to sleep with a headache, woke up with a headache, just thinking about how she's managing. And I just send her, a lot of love and obviously fervent prayers and, just constantly sending good juju. Sorry to say it that way, but I've been saying it when I called her games all year. Just sending all that good energy and light and love her way because she's definitely going to need it. Obviously uncharted territory for her, physically and mentally to get through. But, this time next year, we're going to be talking about how miraculous it is that, she's been able to get back to who she has been for the game and who she's been for JuJu.
No doubt about it. It's so beautifully well said. And she's someone who's shed a lot of light on other, I wouldn't say shed a lot of light, emanates a lot of light from within the sport. And to lose her and that light for however long she's out is certainly a loss. The way her teammates responded was incredible, by the way. What Kiki did last night is inspiring, and we'll see what USC can do for the rest of this tournament, and wishing JuJu the best. Christy, always great to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and everything, your emotion with us. I always appreciate having you, and I'll see you soon, my friend.
I appreciate you, Craig. Thank you so much. All love all the time.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate that. Christy Winters Scott with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we will turn gears to football, much less emotional. Not because football's not emotional. Got wild men out there yelling, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But we got a couple of really fun mailbag questions in our Take a mailbag that only Logan can answer. And so we're going to share those answers with you next. And then coming up, 6 o'clock, Robbie Hummel, men's basketball analyst for CBS. He was on the call for the Maryland games. We are going to let you hear my conversation that I had a little earlier today with him. And then Kevin Willard's conversation with Kevin Sheehan as well in the 6 o'clock hour here on the Team 980. Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. Take Command was a fun one today. Did a bunch of draft stuff. Talked about receiver. Talked about edge. But if you want to hear all that, you're going to have to listen to Take Command. It's a podcast. We can't play the whole thing on the radio for you. It'd be very lazy from us. I mean, I guess we could. Be very, very, very lazy from us. But we do play part of it for you because we want to make sure we have Logan on the show as often as possible. He's only the smartest guy talking about football in the whole darn city. And there was a couple of mailbag questions we got at the end of this week's episode that I thought were really fun and different and insightful, and I think you guys will enjoy. So we're going to play the end of today's Take Command for you. Again, if you want the full thing with a lot of the draft breakdown, then listen to the full episode from the beginning. Just do it after 7 o'clock once we're done. Also, schedule update. Toby Altizer is going to join us live for our annual edition, Anthony, of Is That Guy a Washington National? Our official Nationals preview. Do we know the players on the team?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm
sure.
not.
I mean, I didn't say I'm going to do well, but I'm ready. So we're going to do that at 6 o'clock. That's when Toby can swing by. So once he's done over doing his job over at the Fan, we're going to have Toby, who's, of course, the co-host of Bustin' Loose Baseball, with us to play Is That Guy a Washington National? We will let you hear some of Kevin Willard's chat with Kevin Sheehan at 6:15, and then our conversation with Robbie Hummel we'll let you hear at 6:30. So Hummel, awesome stuff on the NCAA Tournament at Maryland. I was able to tape that actually earlier today, so I can tell you, although he will not be joining us live, it's a real good chat. I know because we already did it. Real things coming up at 6:45, but right now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the brains of Logan Paulson. We got two really fun questions to wrap up here on Take Command, Logan, and we're going to have to rely on your experience for both of these because never played in the NFL. This one, Brian, a question for Logan. How much does the front office talk to players about other players? For the draft, a player from the same school, even if they never played together, might still have contacts and know inside intel. Free agency, it seems even more significant that a player would have a great intel on a potential signing. And the ultimate version, how much do coaches, players talk to players about other players on the team when considering who to retain? Is there any etiquette about this thing? You famously did draft evaluations. You ever have a GM ask you for them? But a more important intel front. I think that's really interesting. You want to use sources. You also want to put your person in a bad spot. So what and what from the player side and how do front offices handle this?
So I think this is a good question. So what I would say is front offices, scouting departments, if they're good, they'll ask anybody anything. Like I remember last year or this year even, I trained a couple tight ends for the drafts, right? For example, and I don't know how this, but someone from the scouting department stopped me the other day in the office and was like, "Hey, did you work with these guys?" And I said, and he's like, "Can you give me the 411 on them?" So here we go. So I don't know how they figured that out, but when I was playing, like, you'd be like, "Hey, did you play with so and so?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah." And like, "What do you think about him?" And then you just kind of give the little run, like, "Was he pro? Like, how's he as a worker?" I said, "Oh, I played with him when he was really young. He hadn't really figured it out yet, but real tight," or whatever I'd say. You know what I'm saying? And so I do think like they understand like the conversation we have in here about prospects and character and all that stuff. They understand that at the highest level. Like they understand how important that is, and they have a whole staff. Like I was talking to Dan the other day, and I didn't even think this, but this is so true. Like the reason you have a regional scout is because you get a guy who watches a player hopefully for 4 years, 4 consecutive years. I follow this guy's career. I talk to the coaches about him. I talk to the janitors about him. I know him really, really well. I think that's ultimately what you're trying to do is every piece of information to help peel back the onion. Because quite frankly, like if he might be different, the guy that they're talking about, he might be different with me than he was with a coach or when he's with the scout. And it's just kind of in behind the veil a little bit and understand who he is. And it's always a great, like I was talking of the day. And it's always when it's like, oh, what about this player? A guy that I'm coaching. I was talking to him about a player. They're like, dude, the best dude. And you're just like, and he's not, not his agent. He's not, he's like, they're not even really friends, but he's like, oh, dude, I love practicing. And he's like, you're just like, yes. And I think that's ultimately what you're looking for, just kind of that stamp of just like, okay, like we couldn't get a scout the other day, and he's like, we couldn't get a lot of information because of how they were handling scouts. So I called his high school coach, and his high school coach said XYZ, and it just gave me like, okay, like it supports the film, it supports the character we've seen, and so that they're looking for every possible edge and into that person, and I think that is what you want from a good scouting department is knowledge and familiarity.
So I actually do have something to contribute because I'm a reporter, damn it, or used to be. Now I just sit and give opinions all day. But like when you're a reporter, you have to understand your sources. And
Yes.
if I'm not saying this is you, but if I'm going to Logan, he says every guy's the best. I probably am not putting a lot of stock in Logan's opinion on that. It's okay. Oh, that guy. Oh, yeah, I loved him. And it's like, that guy? No one else has had a good thing to say. It turns out that guy. And then it's like, I'm going to file that away and be like, I don't know that Logan is a reliable source. Just to understand who you're talking to. So I would imagine front office guy like actual Logan, not actual Logan, who's going to be honest, really understands what it's like to be professional. Like if you're asking a guy who's a rookie and wasn't very professional in his career about his college teammate who's his friend, like you got to understand the context there and positives and the negatives of that. So I think that's the kind of funny thing about scouting when it comes to the non-tape stuff is like you're actually becoming a reporter in a lot of ways.
Yes.
You're becoming
Investigator. Somebody, one scout I talked to at the comment was like, he characterized himself as like, I'm a detective. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We've seen like former intelligence officials participate in interviews and stuff when they were telling insert your 3-letter agency here, because those people are professionals, like ultimate professionals at like understanding people, and that is incredibly valuable skill to NFL teams. So yeah, I love the way you started that answer with like good scouting department will talk to anyone about anything, but then it's worth that information that becomes really valuable. So I think that's really interesting, and definitely to hear that teams do that. Like, so not putting the same stock in Bobby Wagner's opinion versus basically anybody else, because he's Bobby Wagner, but
right.
I'm not going to say else. But like Bobby Wagner, that guy's a pro. I'm like, cool. I need those sources need. If some other say it, then I might be a little bit more wanting to do some more follow up. Anything else on that before we get to the last question?
I think this is the best. This is the big difference between what we do, which is like tape evaluation, talent evaluation, and actual scouting. Like the juice is the real like sweet science of the draft and free agency is determined in this part of the space. And I think it's really in our draft discussion we talked about character. In our free agency discussion earlier in the show we talked about character. Right. This is where the scouting department really makes their money. Like I had a conversation with a defensive coordinator, and he was like, I don't need a scout if a guy can play football. I don't need a scout to tell me a fit anymore. Like it used to be the scouts had to watch film because they had to cut film, but now with like PFF, everything's a cut up, everything's a hyperlink. We can get any information. I need to know if the guy's a good dude, know if the guy's wired right. And that's ultimately what the scouts need to do, is be able to come to the coach and be like, I had this issue as his freshman year, but he figured it out. The coaches say he turned a corner and now he's a team captain. Like I need that guy. That's what this is. And so like, this is where it's always, I feel somewhat disingenuous doing these talent evaluations because it's such a small piece of the actual puzzle. It's this other thing that really makes making good fits for it.
Right. And by the way, the relationship element is enormous, right? If you go to a college coach and you might have that situation where they say all their players are awesome because they're trying to put guys in the league as high draft picks, which helps them in recruiting and now in the NIL portal and all that. If you have a relationship with someone, then they're going to be honest with you. And, they might be like, hey, I don't know how this dude's going to do out for college program.
Yeah.
Like the freedom of the NFL might be a bad thing for him. And so
Right.
you have to, the GMs, assistant GMs, scout out, like the relationships you develop with college coaches, coordinators, position coaches, janitors, like you said, like all that stuff becomes really, really important. If there's a class that all athletes take, I want to know the professor. Like that's what intelligence gathering is in this space, and that stuff becomes enormously important. All right, last one to wrap up. This was a really fun question that I'm actually very curious about how this changes team to team. Question for Take Command. This was one that we were going to do with Chris. Eventually, we'll get Gorez on here, the crossover episode. I assume that the players on the Commanders team got some direction on what they should be working on during the offseason. But when does that happen? The day after the season ended sounded rushed. Don't imagine it was then. He says, I never miss a podcast. So, Alec, thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words. When offseason marching orders and how specific are they?
So, yeah, I mean, usually it does happen. And so what you do is you have a team meeting and like it's like, hey, like real quick, you know, it's just so these are the dates where they're finally coming back. Great job on the year. Make sure you check in with the strength conditioning staff. They'll give you the off-season play. Most guys don't use it. Like they use it as like kind of a template, but like they have their private coaches or they like to train a little bit differently. Like I always would take the pamphlet, like read through it and be like, okay, this is generally what they want in terms of getting ready for coming back and the notes. But I always wanted to kind of do some different stuff than what I did for 6 months or 8 months I was on the team. So I would kind of train on my own, but that's where they give it to you. And then obviously you have your exit meeting with your coach in person or over the phone. And you just a quick review of their high level thoughts of the year. So I check in with team's coach and my position coordinator, sometimes the offensive coordinator, depending on my relationship with them, and just be like, hey, like, you know, thanks for a great year. Like things to take to the off season. And they'd kind of be like, you know, this, and this, or here's the positive thing that I really like about your game. We need to make sure we're better in this area. And so then I try to take that and go make sure I got better at it in the off season. And that was sometimes those conversations are really hard and you're like, oh damn, like I'm in a lot of trouble here for next off season, whatever. But you know, like that is a bit rushed, but it's not like this crazy formal thing. You pop in the office with the special teams coach and he goes, hey, loved what you did. You know, you're not great at covering kicks, but we can find a role for you in this other area. And like maybe 3 minutes, then you go to the position, show it longer, better relationship there. But that's basically what it looks like, and get out of there.
What is there a distinct one that stands out that you remember, good or bad, of a post meeting with a coach that set up an off season for you in a significant way?
Yeah. So the one that I remember having a meeting with the special teams coach and kind of coming in, and I thought like I had a pretty good year. And he was just like, hey man, you know, love how you work, love how you prepare, but 2 penalties this year. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And I had to kind of go back and rewatch some film and be like, how do I clean up some of this stuff? Like this stuff is when I'm kind of riding this risk, holding penalties or whatever it was. That's just how I got that to a certain extent because I'm the best athlete, but can I clean up some of this other stuff? And so some of it was snap count related. So I went home and kind of was like, well, how do I make sure that I own the snap count? And so kind of looking through the book, make sure I was familiar with the cadences. And then I realized like, I'm not getting the cadence because I'm thinking about other stuff. So kind of shifting that to the forefront, and that all was kind of decent, you know, process. And it wasn't every day, but it was just something kind of like that touched on like the week when sure it was better. It did get better, you know, like, which was good. Like those are the types of conversations that are helpful for players because you don't always get super honest feedback necessarily in season. Like they're thinking, so like it's just a nice like little nugget here. Okay, I can go work on that.
Are those conversations different? Like for you, the first couple of years, and I know for you, your entire career, you always felt like you were team roster no matter what. But if you had, I guess if you were undrafted, did you have how many multi-year deals did you sign?
So my rookie year, and then I signed a 3-year deal after that. So pretty much my whole time in Washington. Yeah.
So how different was it? Let's say the first year after you signed that 3-year deal, you know you're coming back versus the years you're a pending free agent because they'll still talk to you, they'll still give you some stuff. But I imagine those might be a little conversations.
Yeah, much different actually. You know, like when you're on the 3-year deal, you're kind of building with the team, like you're part of, you know, long term, but like, you know, maybe the next year plans, like you're going to camp, like, And on the 1-year deal, like, those questions were, you come in and it'd be like, hey, Logan, we'd love to sign you back. We love what you did this year. And that's more with the conversation. Very high level, very superficial.
They don't actually want to sign you.
Well, it depends. Like, so I had a conversation with the Bears, and I had I think a really solid year with the Bears. Very physical, kind of embodied what they wanted from a blocking wise standpoint. And the GM was like, "We'd love to have you back," like straight up. And I just think like they're coming off kind of an emotional year, right? So like in that moment, yeah, we want you back, right? But then they go do their reevaluations, their positions, and sign like Deion Sims, who was this guy from Michigan State, who was big, a little bit more pass game upside at the wide. And that's, again, my career was like, you can always get a little bit better, and if you can, you should. I'm not liking for that, but
yeah,
I do think things change as the offseason is, and that's how I felt in that conversation. So I didn't get like a ton of feedback from him in that moment, but I'm glad I went in with him, because like at least there was some. And again, like talking to my position coach, talking to head coach, everyone, the process is long. You got to like reevaluate, reassess your needs as you get some distance from the event. And I think that's a good process. But again, like that's one of the reasons why those meetings at the end of the year on the 1-year deal feel a little bit less tactile, maybe.
Yeah. On this, because I think this is another fascinating thing, and my trainer brain goes a little bit on this one. Like a piece of feedback, we need you to get a little quicker. We need you to get a little. That's one thing, right? If it's like pure strength and conditioning, like okay, I can go trainer, and in your case, a guy who is well versed in this stuff, and ultimately now is a trainer yourself, like you probably knew how to. But when it's like become a better runner, like the types of things sound straightforward, but like actually doing them, I'd imagine, is hard. Like, how do you become a better route runner? How do you eliminate penalties? I didn't want to try to commit penalties. I can't just like be like, oh, snap my fingers, I eliminated the. Like, how often do you get feedback? And really, for I think a lot of other players, you're again well versed, and you would put in the homework and research. But like, how often do you think guys get feedback actually don't know how to act on it?
Very often that I'm coaching and I'm talking with about 10 NFL guys, and they come to me with the feedback, right? And I think it's hard to, I think sometimes have a plan for how to get better in those areas. Like I need to be better on first down. I need better if I'm a defensive lineman, or my back pedal needs to be better. I need this one was interesting. My tracking needs to be better. Like how I track ball carrier, how I track the ball in the air needs to be better. So as a coach, I'm like, that's to be better at. But now how do they are getting better at it. So I had to come up with like, there's no tracking drills. So like I need to get
create
out there.
One.
Yeah. I need to get out there. I need to run, and he needs to track me. I get a ball, I need to throw it, and he needs to track the ball off the bounce and make sure I'm taking good angles. And I got to evaluate, get a little loose there. Let's make sure we're attacking the backside hip. And just after rep, it's like getting a sparring, and I think that's sometimes unfair. These meetings can be unfair because we need you to be better at X, but there's no methodology to get there. And so they're kind of left in limbo about how to get that done. Like, and the other thing too that used to bother me is, you said the route running thing is like, sometimes they've you as this player, and so they flex that player. But I don't want to be this player when I get back. I want to be a better version of myself. So I wish people would have been like, hey, we need you to run better routes. You know what I mean? I wish that had been part of it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, so, for like, hey, Logan, clean up the holding penalties and become the best blocker in the league. And you're like, yeah, but if I'm a better route runner, then I probably would stop getting replaced by guys who are better route runners.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. And so, like, I wish the feedback would reflect that, but they're not worried about you; they're about the team. And so, I do think to the meetings being somewhat helpful. I do think it's important for athletes to kind of take back and do a self scout. Like, hey, how can I don't be content. Like, I think probably you're 5'6" content being this bulky blocking tight end. It really hurt my career long term. Right. I'm always telling guys, like, think about, again, I was never going to be, Kyle, but I could be the best version of Logan Paulson in that area and spent more time on that skill acquisition. And that's something that I would say too, is like, the meeting doesn't reflect the best thing for you. It reflects the best team. So like, can you, again, critically think comprehensively about what you are long term? I think that's important too. And again, developing your own methodologies on how to improve and get better, I think, is important, but also very, very challenging.
Yeah, as a strength coach, I just think about reverse engineering. Where it's like, if our goal is to do this, how do we create the drill? Whether it's with like, we have these things, pods or fit lights.
Yeah.
There's another version. Can you
They're
use
great.
those little lights that light up different colors to simulate decision making? Can you, you get a couple people out there and have, a handoff versus play action drill, play recognition. Like, you have to only practice the skill. It's hard. You're not going to recreate a full tactical game. So it's not like in the NBA where guys get, and then they can go play pickup and they can work.
Point.
Like, it's a totally different thing. So you have to try to create skill that you're trying to work on, do it to the best of your ability in a safe manner, where ultimately then, best prepared for the regular season. It's tough. Football is one of the hardest to train in that way. Like, doing the speed, explosiveness, power stuff, like, that's easy.
Yeah.
We know how to do that. But
yeah, I've actually a lot of inspiration from how fighters train, and how like rugby players train, because it's like they're similar. You can't just go do rugby. I can't just fight. I need to skill acquire.
Football sparring. I think that was a great video. And it's also very, very different based off in terms of what you need. So it's a fun off season's fun. And maybe we can get Gorez on to talk about some of the things that he's done with different guys over the years too. So maybe that'll be the fun follow up to that question if we do that crossover episode. So this episode of Just Take Command, the best podcast, is over. We'll do it next week, so go ahead and hit your questions. We also we're gonna do Logan's going on vacation in a couple weeks, and I'm gonna try to recruit a special guest for a different kind of mailbag. So everyone can look forward to that in a couple weeks. It won't be Chris Gorez. It could be fun, but we're not gonna do Chris Gorez. We'll have someone who covers the Commanders, I think, try to do that with us. So also working on some guests around the draft. Stay tuned for all that. We'll see you later in the week for another episode of Take Command. And have a great week, everybody. And quick shout at the end here. If you want to come hang out, Logan won't be there, but we're broadcasting live. Nats opening day, Tap 99. So the Hoffman show will be live on Thursday. If you're going to be in the park and want to come up and say hello, football in commercial breaks. I hate when you talk to me during the show, Logan. Don't try to talk to me during the show. I'm ADD and I can't focus and I'll get lost. But happy to talk with you in a break. And we'll see you at Tap 99 Thursday. There'll be another podcast. That's it. I'm done rambling. End of outro. Goodbye. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command as a brand new home.
That's right. You can YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around.
Nats opening day is around the corner. We'll be broadcasting live Thursday from Tap 99. You can check us out there. 4 o'clock is when the show starts. We're all the way through until 7. So come hang out with Chris Russell before the game and then after the game with me if you're going to be down in the area. Or if you're just looking for somewhere to watch the Maryland game that night, of course, you could pop through and get your pregame on, get a meal, and then catch the game at Tap 99 across the street from Nats Park. And, Anthony, there's only one way that we at the Hoffman Show celebrate Nats opening day.
Only one way, sir.
And that is to make absolute asses of ourselves. There is nothing that we do better on this show on topics that we should probably know a little bit more about. And so, for, I don't know how many years in a row we've done this, but for the insert number of years straight year, we welcome in Toby Altizer, host of the Bustin' Loose podcast, a podcast where he and Grant Paulson talk very intelligently on baseball to do the absolute dumbest thing we could possibly do with Toby's baseball knowledge, and that is to host Is That Guy a Washington National? Toby, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Sir.
Always great. Always great.
So here's the premise of the game. Toby's going to name what we think is a baseball player. For Anthony, for all we know, he might name like a movie character or something. And we have to simply say, yes or no, is that guy a Washington National? Anthony, I think we each should go on each guy, and or should we alternate? How do we want to do this?
I think we should alternate.
Okay, we should alternate. All right, so I'm gonna open up my little tablet here just for a scoring system. But other than that, really, oh wait, we have to get the official game show music. It's not a game show on this show until we say, is that guy a Washington National? All right, Toby, the floor is yours, sir. Anthony, do you want to go first or second?
I'll start it off.
All right, Toby, we need a name of a possible Washington Nationals baseball player for Anthony Haynie to tell us whether or not he's actually a Washington Nationals baseball player.
All right, we'll start with Josh Lowe. Josh Lowe. Is Josh Lowe a Washington National?
I'm going to go with yes simply because you're giving me a softball, man. Like, you're giving me a layup, essentially.
Okay.
That's
so
what you think.
I'm going to say yeah.
Real quick, I'm going to ask Craig his. Nathaniel Lowe. Is Nathaniel Lowe a Washington National?
I do believe Nathaniel Lowe. That is a name that I feel like I've seen in print, and I do believe he is a Washington National.
So the correct answer is Nathaniel Lowe is a Washington National.
Yeah!
Josh Lowe is his brother who plays for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh, Toby, so this is what you want to do, man? You want to give me a hard time? You want to start off, bro?
He knows whose name is on the show.
All right.
So after round one, on Nathaniel Lowe, as opposed to Josh Lowe, who is a Major League Baseball player.
He is. Major leaguer for the Tampa Bay Rays. Outfielder. I saw him hit a home run while I was down at spring training.
The Tampa Bay Rays, who are playing this season in?
The Yankees spring training facility.
Yeah, because
Steinbrenner Fields.
Yeah, the Hurricane last year. So they're in Tampa, I believe.
Yes.
Because that stadium I have seen in person across from Raymond James Stadium where the Bucks play.
Yes.
There you go. You thought I had no baseball knowledge. I do, Anthony.
You know more than me, clearly.
It's just based off the fact that I covered a game at a football stadium next door. All right, round two. Ding, 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 ding. Is that guy a Washington National? Toby Altizer, round two, please.
Jose Ferrer.
Jose Ferrer is not a Washington National.
Jose Ferrer is a left-handed reliever for the Washington Nationals.
Oh, my gosh. I'm 0 for 2, Craig.
Yeah,
This isn't the life I deserve, man. It truly isn't.
Let's see.
All right.
And Toby's not making it easy on the boy.
No, he's not.
No, I mean, we're going deep names because I think you know the popular guys. Like, chances are I'm not going to go C.J. Abrams. I think you know that guy.
He's a national.
He is a national.
Do I get credit for that, Craig?
I think you guys know that.
Okay.
No.
All right.
But this was, we were talking before you give me my next one. We were talking in the hallway about this because Anthony was asking my confidence level, and I was like, it's not high. But I do feel like there's definitely I feel like if we did if you gave us the 9 starters and just didn't tell us that's what you were doing, I would do way better this year than I would have in previous years because you're starting to see some of the names you've been hearing about for a while in the minor league system come up. Some of the guys that were acquired in the Soto trade, for instance, like those guys are starting to come up and be actual major leaguers this year.
All right. Your next one, Craig. Josh Rutledge.
Josh Rutledge is not a Washington National. Josh Rutledge is the the husband of Laura Rutledge. He was a former Major League Baseball player, but I do not think he is currently a Washington National, nor a current Major League Baseball player.
This guy's dialed in. I was trying to fool him. Jackson Rutledge is a Nationals pitcher. Josh Rutledge is the husband of Laura Rutledge. So well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
I just got extraordinarily lucky on that one.
I knew that
who
one
Josh
too.
Rutledge was. You said it, and I was like, wait a second. You can't get that on me. So through 2 rounds, somehow, some way, through nothing but pure dumb luck, I am up 2-0 on Anthony. Oh, the fall is going to be mighty.
All right,
Next
Toby.
up,
Let's see. Anthony, is Paul DeYoung a Washington National?
Can you spell DeYoung?
Paul DeYoung. DeJong. Paul
Of course.
DeYoung.
Paul DeYoung.
He is not a National.
That's tough because he's probably starting at third base for your Washington Nationals on Thursday.
Gosh.
That is tough. That is tough.
Gracious. Good gracious.
Taking notes here. Starting third baseman.
Yes.
This
Got it.
might be a
Yes.
shutout, Craig.
All right.
Hey,
Next.
that means if I get nothing more correct, then I would win.
Yeah.
Take that. There's definitely a chance that's going to happen here.
All
All right,
right.
Toby, what you got next for me?
Next for you, Jorge Mateo.
Jorge, first of all,
Can I steal?
no. You guys know the Kirkjian bit on Van Pelt, right? Where he does the Baltimore accents?
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like Jorge Mateo would be a good Baltimore accent name.
Mm.
Now, does that mean that guy's a Baltimore Oriole? Or is he a Washington National? Or is he neither? I'm going to say Jorge Mateo is not a Washington National. He's somewhere in the minor league system.
It's ironic that you brought up
Or is he at a Baltimore
because he plays for the Orioles.
God dang it.
Oh,
I should have.
wow.
That was pure dumb luck. I was like, this is too stupid to actually happen. That was not me pulling a sly bit, which you now know because I then said the correct answer out loud and proceeded to veer away from it like an absolute dumbass.
Craig's good at this.
He's
No.
good. Apparently, he's good at figuring out when I'm just pulling some crap out here. I like it. I like
I'm
it.
not.
Who's Jorge Mateo with the Orioles?
He is a shortstop. I think he's injured actually right now, but he's a speedy guy, so he can steal a little bit. He can get on the base paths and create some havoc.
That's Jorge Mateo.
All right, Anthony.
Oh my gosh.
Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Oh, I know this. He's a National, baby.
yeah,
I got
that's
one,
tough
Craig.
because he's pitching for the Dodgers.
Oh, are you serious? Oh, you want to know what's funny, Craig?
What's
So,
that?
I was
First
in the
of all,
one-
the fact sit down. Your head's out of the frame on the video.
He's so confident Yamamoto pitches for the Nationals.
So
I'd be fired
What
up
was his
if he
first name again?
Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Yoshinobu.
I believe he pitched in the Japan series for the Dodgers.
He did because the game was on in the 1067
Nasty
studio,
splitter. Nasty splitter.
and you guys asked me who that was, and I thought for some reason I was watching the Nationals, and it was actually the Dodgers. God.
All right.
Thanks, Toby. I'm
Craig.
0 for 4.
Roki Sasaki. Is Roki Sasaki a Washington National?
Sure.
He is not. He also pitches for the Dodgers. He was the pride of the offseason. A Japanese pitcher coming over, throws 100+, walked 5 guys in 3 innings in his debut in Japan. Anthony, I'm going to throw you a bone here.
Please.
Get a guy off the schneid. Or thoroughly embarrass him. One or the other.
Is Shinizuke Agasawara a part of the Washington Nationals?
Oh, my gosh.
I'm trying to take notes, Toby. Japanese names, famously, a lot of letters.
Shinizuke Agasawara. I think I'm saying that right. It might be Ogasawara.
Do they say that on the national broadcast? How do they say it on the national broadcast?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Does he not know because it's not a national? Or
That's
does
what
I
he-
think his nickname is Shino. I think his nickname is Shino.
All right,
You
how's-
think or you know?
A crafty lefty. Doesn't throw real hard.
Craig, what would your guess be?
My guess is no. He's probably a pitcher for the Dodgers at this point.
All right, he's a pitcher for the Dodgers, so no.
He pitches for the Washington Nationals.
We were both wrong.
I was 0 for 5, dog.
You want a couple more?
Oh, my God. I just need to get one right, please. Please.
How many would we have to name until Anthony gets one right?
It might be a little bit. I could go through some names here. Is Colin Poche a pitcher for the Nationals?
No.
He is. A left-handed
I'm done
reliever.
taking notes at this
A
point.
left-handed reliever. Another one for you, Anthony. Is Mike Soroka a Washington National?
Craig.
I think he's trying to help you get Nationals at this point. I'm saying yes.
He is a pitcher for the Washington
Fine.
Nationals.
Like, eventually, I think he's
Hallelujah.
just naming pitchers for the Nationals until you say yes.
Can you at least do me do you know who's starting opening day for the Nationals on the mound?
Josiah Gray.
Oh.
No, Mackenzie Gore. Good.
I mean, at least we understand why Craig got some correct and Anthony got none. Mackenzie Gore is
Was I
starting
close?
opening day. Josiah Gray pitched opening day last year.
Oh, okay,
But
that's what it
Josiah
was.
Gray may not pitch at all this year.
Yeah, he's got the Tommy John.
Yeah,
right?
he's injured. He's injured.
I'm a year late. Bad.
Honestly, man, we do these games and typically they're pretty funny. And somehow they're always funnier than I think they're going to be. This one was even funnier than I thought it would be, based off the fact that these games are always funnier than I think they will be. If you want actual baseball analysis, may I recommend the Bustin' Loose Baseball podcast, starring Toby Altizer. Toby, unbelievable job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
He has
Thank
a great
you.
poker face, too. I was looking at him. I'm like, he's going to give it to me. And I never got it.
Not a damn one of them. When we get back, Sheehan's conversation with Kevin Willard, you got to hear what he said about Derek Queen's game winner. But first, the latest in the world of women's sports, presented to you by Wawa. Chicken how you want to at Wawa with customizable crispy and roasted chicken sandwiches. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Robbie Hummel, CBS Sports, called the Maryland games this weekend on the men's side. Will join us at 6:30. Right now, though, Kevin Willard was on with Sheehan earlier today, and it was really sensational. The full 20 minutes is worth your time if you remotely are following Maryland, and certainly if you care about Maryland on a deep level. If you're a Terps fan, you got to go back and listen to the full thing. But they started off talking about Derek Queen's game winner, and it was one of the, frankly, this level of transparency from a coach is pretty unprecedented. It was a really great chat. And then they got into a little bit about Willard's future and where things stand with that. But first, here is the exchange that they had, Kevin and Kevin, earlier today on the unbelievable ending to that game the other day that sent Maryland to the Sweet 16.
Inside the huddle with 3.7 seconds left. We've heard, your explanation. Did you really just look around and say, who wants to take the last shot?
Yeah, Kev. I mean, sometimes it's interesting. I have 4 guys that have never played an NCAA tournament game. And, to be in that situation, sometimes you have to read body language. You have to kind of see how guys are playing throughout the whole game. And I just, I told the guys, I said, guys, all right, I'm not losing another buzzer beater. I said, I've had enough. I said, so we have our chance now. I said, we haven't had a chance in the last 4 games that we've lost because of buzzer beaters. I said, now it's our time. And I said, everybody take a deep breath. I said, who wants the ball? And I looked around, and Derek, he just said, give me the M&F ball. And everyone kind of looked at me and kind of said, yep, give him the ball. And I said, all right, let's go out there and do it. No messing around. Let's go out there. And I said, I don't want any of that. Nothing fancy there, big fella. Just go out there and just get a bucket. And he looked at me and says, I got you. And that was it.
If, just hypothetically, if nobody had stepped up, if he hadn't stepped up and said it, what would you have run?
Somebody.
Oh, come on. What was in your mind before he stepped up and said, give me the MF ball?
Well, I have a play card that has, on the back, I have, it's 6 scenarios, and they've been the same plays really for the whole year. So I kind of knew that if depending on what side of the floor we call timeout on is usually how I'll run a play. And, because I think we were a little bit shocked that the guy made the shot, Selton was bringing the ball up on the right side of the floor. So when we called timeout, my original thought process was to give it to Rodney, because Rodney's really good going left and taking a step back jumper, which I thought we had plenty of time for. But once Derek said that he wanted it, and the way he said it, and the way those guys reacted to him, it almost like it gave them the confidence. It was just a no-brainer.
I thought it was funny when he said he had never hit a game winner before, and you said, well, I wouldn't have given you the last shot. But he's still a great option. And by the way, getting him the ball where you got him the ball, we've watched all season long. I mean, him in the middle of the floor at the free throw line or free throw line extended is such a comfortable spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that they had the transfer from Purdue guarding him. I forget his name, number 25.
Yeah.
And he's a heck of a defender. But at the end of the day, Derek's a legit 7 foot now. And Heidi, I think, is like 6'7". It was just a kind of simple thing. Just try to get downhill, and he's either going to get fouled or he's going to get a good shot at the bucket.
I noticed something about you because I've only watched the play about 100 times at this point. You watched the final possession standing from the very end of your bench, not anywhere near your seat or the coaching box or midcourt. Why that spot, that angle to watch the final play?
I didn't want to. 2 reasons. I want to make sure Selton and Derek did what they were supposed to do on the baseline. The play's designed for Selton to go over top of Derek, and then Derek to go, and then JuJu pin down. So I just wanted to make sure that Selton went over top. And then in that situation, I didn't want to be in Jacoby's way or vision. I just wanted Jacoby to focus on the play. So for me being down there, I was able to help Selton and Derek kind of just in that situation, although we've run that play and they know the play, just to give them a little bit more confidence and guidance.
Kevin Willard earlier on the Kevin Sheehan show. I just think some of those details are very, very cool. And there's also, they talked about the defensive sequence, Anthony, too, which I thought was also, like, from a basketball junkie standpoint, maybe even the more interesting in terms of details. I thought, obviously, that was the more relevant with Queen hitting the shot and them advancing. But when he talked about how the foul, like the decision to foul, also came down to this particular opponent had the biggest out of bounds or baseline out of bounds playbook that he's ever scouted. And if they foul below the 3-point line, he knows that gets into that sequence of plays versus the risk of if it's above the 3-point line, side out of bounds, there's only so dangerous that it's going to be. And specifically that by percentages, inbounds from under the basket generate more threes than the side out of bounds. Like, it's a good reminder when you hear where he positions himself to all this stuff, that are there things that Kevin Willard does that drive Maryland fans crazy? Yeah. In that game, I couldn't believe they didn't get Queen more touches more often, right? But these guys are so smart, and the level that they think about and the details they think about are so far beyond the things that we think about watching a game as average fans. That I think that actually winds up cutting both ways. By and large, it makes a lot of our criticism sometimes probably feel very silly because there's things that we are not thinking about. And it's like, well, I didn't do that thing because of this detail that you didn't think about. Oh, okay. I, fan, or even media analysts, are wrong. Other times, though, I do think sometimes these coaches lose the forest through the trees. And you're just like, yeah. But the big picture, we're missing. But I appreciate that Kevin, in multiple instances in this interview, was really transparent with Sheehan about a bunch of different basketball stuff, because I think it's a good learning experience for all of us to learn more about the game and the things that we're watching and the things that a coach like him is thinking about at this point in the year.
Yeah, definitely good to, get a peek inside the huddle. And the defensive possession you were talking about beforehand, I had even a question, like, did we really just run zone out of the timeout? Because I didn't feel as though, being in they shot us out of the zone. So to go back to the zone, I thought it was a little bit weird of a coaching decision. But, yeah, super transparent on his end. And, he was just brutally honest. And that's all, I think a lot of fans want anyway. So as you've said, like, definitely will recommend, going back, listening to the full interview just for a little peek behind, the scenes and things.
For sure. And the other thing they talked about, the other big topic was Willard's future. We don't have time to play any of that portion of the interview now, but if you want to rewind on the Odyssey app, you can check it out in hour 2 of Kevin's show today, or the podcast is available just to listen to that interview on demand. Kevin also had Brenda Freeze today. Up next for us, though, Robbie Hummel, who called the game for CBS Sports, the men's game, over the weekend. He joins us to talk about the Terps to wrap up here on the Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming on YouTube too at the 980. And it is our pleasure, especially considering how this game ended, to go back and revisit the weekend for the Terps one more time with the man who was sitting in the analyst chair to watch the Terps get to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2016. It's Robbie Hummel from CBS Sports. Robbie, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's go. Let's start at the end. Let's start with the Derek Queen game winner. What was it like for you to be sitting there with Lisa and Jalen and experience that moment courtside on the mic?
Yeah, I mean, it was a shot. Really an incredible game. You know, the Colorado State shot that Jalen Lake makes is just, you know, it's a contested three that felt like it hung in the air forever. And, you know, I love that Kevin Willard just kind of put that in. Granted, he asked Derek, you know, who wants the ball, and he was adamant that he did. But I love that they gave him space and said, go make a play. And that's not an easy shot, driving left, shooting it off the glass, you know, with your right hand. But, yeah, just an incredible moment for Maryland. And certainly I think for all teams that make a run in the NCAA tournament, you've got to find a way to win a game that you don't play all that well in. And I don't think Maryland's played that well. You know, they looked a little shaky the first 4 minutes of their first round game and looked a little bit shaky against Colorado State. But you find ways to win. They've you know, been great all season long, and what an accomplishment to make it to the Sweet 16. And hopefully, you know, go a little bit further, because Florida is good, but certainly Maryland has the talent to beat them.
Well, and that's been the thing with this Maryland team, right? And you're a guy, obviously, who pays very close attention to the Big Ten. And this is a team that on any given night seemingly can beat anyone, and they can do it in so many different ways. But that seems to be a double-edged sword for them. Like, what to you is the best version of this Maryland team? Like, who's the offense running through? What thing doing that they're at their best on any given day?
Good question, because honestly, all five of those dudes in the starting lineup can get it going. And I guess I would say probably when Jacoby Gillespie is just kind of playing with tempo and spraying it around and scoring for himself. You know, although I think that Rodney Rice's struggles a little bit showed how important that he is when he's not maybe himself, how they look a little bit different. But early on in that Colorado State game, I felt like none of Maryland's guards were playing well. I didn't think Gillespie was playing well. Rodney Rice was, you know, really struggling with his jumper. He got it going eventually in that game. And Selton Miguel didn't start off well. But yeah, I love watching them play, because they have five guys on the floor most of the time that can really burn you. They guard. The only thing I would say is, you know, depth and foul trouble are where this team can get in trouble. If they were to get in that stuff, that's an issue, because they just don't have, I guess, from a firepower standpoint. They've got some guys that can come in and plug some holes, but it's definitely a drop-off when the starting five is not on the floor.
Robbie Hummel, CBS Sports college basketball analyst for the NCAA Tournament. We're on the Hoffman Show. This is what always I think is such a conundrum for college Bobby is you go to some of the older guys, you go to the guards, and then there's this guy, Derek Queen, who's going to be a top 8 pick probably here in a couple months. And it feels like we go through him too.
Yeah.
What do you think if you're Willard, and especially, you know, I was talking about this yesterday, who watched this team on a really regular basis, and the callers and the whole deal here, like balance wanting that you get certainly your most talented guy the ball, but acknowledging he is a big, albeit a big who is very, very young. And, you know, do you want to, especially given the season so balanced, where a lot one singular talent?
I think Kevin's done a great job of kind of like balancing this whole thing out. And I also think that all five of those starters have done a terrific job of understanding, like, we're going to take turns. And you know what? On certain nights, if Derek's got it going, yeah, we're going to feed him. Or if Julian's got it going, we're going to get him the ball. Or whoever out of those five guys. So it takes a little bit of teamwork and certainly a great understanding that we can be great together. But they've been willing to sacrifice. And I think also for all five of those guys in the starting lineup, they get their opportunities. You know, they've all five had great seasons. But it's just kind of understanding who's got it going on a certain night and who does the game plan maybe kind of say that we're going to go to. You know, it was apparent in the first game Maryland played, Julian Reese was going to get those touches, especially when they started out slow. He got them back on track. So, yeah, kudos to them for being willing to give it up for the team. And certainly Kevin has got those guys to understand you're all going to get your shots. It's just, let the game come to you.
If you think about it through a game plan lens for the matchup against Florida, is there a particular that you think could be advantageous for Maryland?
I don't know about advantageous because I think Florida's one of the best teams in college basketball.
Sure.
They've got size, they've got athleticism, they've got guards that can go. I just think that Maryland needs to play their best game of the year. And that's not a profound statement, but from a being solid standpoint, from a not turning the ball over standpoint, and they've been pretty good at that this season of taking care of it. I think the mixing and matching of defense that they've done is something you can try to keep Florida off balance. If you score, set up some of that full court pressure to try to keep Florida from getting out and going. But you're going to have to defend Walter Clayton. Like that dude is a problem, and it showed in their win. I'm blanking on who they beat Sunday, but he had hit some just major shots down the stretch. And that's the tough thing about covering the tournament is you don't get to see as much of the other games other than what you're doing. But I was watching in my hotel room, and I'm forgetting who it was against. But Clayton he is a pro.
UConn is who they
yes.
had
Right.
into that game. Which a game we were talking about a game that took about 25 almost for the final 4 minutes to tick off the clock.
Well, the reviews are all of our favorite parts of college.
There's nothing. You got the best seat in the house, looking over across from the broadcast and referees behind monitor. So that's fun for you. Probably with us here from CV. I'm sorry, I just put you in that position. He's never coming back to the show as long as he doesn't hang up on us for the next 4. Robbie, and it's hard to keep the rest of the tournament, whether it's on the off days. I remember tournament back when I was a younger going to some of these things, and you were so wholly consumed in your. But whether it's what you were able to watch on some of the other teams that you saw in that region that you had, who's the most impressive team, most impressive player that you think you've seen so far through the opening weekend?
You're totally right. You just don't get to watch all that much, which is a bummer because as a fan, I love the NCAA tournament. I saw Arizona. Caleb Love was tremendous against Oregon, and I know he's polarizing. I know he's had some unbelievable ups as a college player. He's had some unbelievable downs, but the way he played with a maturity all weekend long, and Arizona's got some super athletes. They're going to have their hands full with probably the tournament favorite in Duke, who's had just a phenomenal year, and John Shire's been tremendous of coaching that team, and certainly Cooper Flagg is the best prospect that we've seen in quite some time. But Arizona was impressive to me. I'm trying to think who I really have gotten to watch. It's not a lot. So It's like I saw them a lot. I know Auburn handled business. I'm intrigued to see if we get Michigan State and Auburn. Michigan State has kind of gotten back to their roots all season long with the running and the rebounding, and they really guard you. They've got the physicality and the depth to handle, I think, Janai Broome. Not stop him, but at least you can throw the waves of bodies that Tom Izzo has at his disposal. So if we get that matchup, I think that would be incredibly intriguing.
When we had our mutual friend Kevin Brown on the show, he was telling us to expect a very chalky tournament that, you look at, for instance, the Ken Bings and just how elite these top teams are historically over the last 15, 20 years compared to any other concentration top team, that this is kind of what we'd expect. If we get to the second weekend and there's a double-digit seed going, outside of the 1 seeds, would you say that Michigan State is your favorite non-1 seed in terms of actual true title contenders, or whether it's a team like your alma mater or anybody else floating around outside the 1? You're keeping an eye on that.
No, I think it's Michigan State, and I think you factor into who's their coach and how much success he's had in this tournament, and just how good Michigan State has been all season long. I think that's the team that I would certainly go with. And interesting, I'm not surprised that Kevin would be, prophetic by digging into the facts of KenPom. I mean, that dude right there, he's on it.
He is.
I would stay with Michigan State. That would be my pick.
All right, let me wrap up with this, circling back to Maryland then real quick. I was with the CBS Sports analyst there's this kind of other thing floating over Maryland with the extension talk, the back and forth between and the school, him wanting resources. Did you feel it all being around that team this weekend, and how that you would be managing the player, especially like you're a senior, you're like Julian Reese, and you're probably at it or sitting next to Kevin in the press conference. Is he about it, and how do you think that Willard's handled it so far?
Yeah, I didn't feel any of that from the team or any. I saw what he said. And I think from a player perspective, everything is so 1 year oriented now that I don't think it even phases these guys.
Fair.
But I do think, my last year at Purdue, Matt Painter almost went in the off season to Missouri, and it was so close. Like I should honestly ask him, like, how close were you to going? And, I was coming off my second ACL tear, and Jawan Johnson and Etwan Moore, who I came into Purdue with, were playing in the NBA at this point. So I was like, man, everybody has left from the time that I got hurt to the time that I'd be coming back. Everyone else that was in the starting five, with me on that team my junior year was gone. And if we're going to lose the head coach too, I was distraught. So I remember trying to call him and trying to guilt him to not leave. Now, granted, it is a different time now with the player movement and all of that. But I do compare this a little bit. Matt Painter did not feel like he had the resources to win at Purdue. And I say that from a standpoint of we had an assistant coach that left Purdue to go to Clemson. And it's not like you're losing an assistant to Kentucky or to a school that's really like a basketball school. At Clemson, you're thinking about football, and they've got, they've had their run. They're a team that has made runs in the NCAA tournament, but it's not like the money was that much more. It was just, I think that was an eye-opening experience for him to lose a school that's not a basketball power, that's not going to throw out a crazy number of money to a guy. And he just didn't feel – so I think that he used that to kind of leverage to get to a place where, all right, if I'm going to stay, I need this, this, and this to win. And I kind of feel it's similar for Kevin. I know the Villanova job being open probably does not help, and Kevin being a Big East guy has certainly fueled that speculation, or a guy that coached in the Big East for a long time at Seton Hall. But, yeah, I think it's fascinating from the outside looking in. I don't think it's distracting the players. I do see a similarity from what I saw in 2011 of Matt Painter saying, this is what I need to win. And I do understand that the landscape has changed in a major way since then. But I just get the feeling that Kevin kind of has the same feeling.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, Robbie, hey, coach, how much do you think you can get me there versus if I stay?
Yeah, no about that. I loved Kevin, though, to saying, well, he pays us the money. And his head is straight in his hands. That was pretty fun.
It was. It's also not wrong. And, hey, it's like, oh, how are you going to get the kids to pay attention? It's like, well, they got to know where the money comes from. And apparently Kevin Willard is the moneymaker at Maryland. And so we'll see if Maryland thinks that with giving the extension. Robbie Hummel will be on. Do you guys have your game assignments? I don't know if they're public. I'm trying not trying to spill secrets. I'm just trying to tell people where you can watch.
I will be in Indianapolis doing the national radio for Westwood One. So we got Houston, Purdue, and we got Tennessee, Kentucky.
Nice. Well, enjoy that. It'll be fun, I'm sure, for you to be around Matt Painter. So enjoy that, and really appreciate your time here on the radio in D.C., Robbie. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So we got a little breaking news to wrap up this here edition of the Hoffman Show. Let's make it official, shall we?
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
The New York Giants have signed Russell Wilson to a one-year deal, $21 million, 10 guaranteed. Anthony, I believe you told me the numbers were
10.5.
10.5, which could be backup money. The 10.5 part, depending on is the 21 number based off him starting X number of games. 10.5 is not too far off what the Commanders, I believe, are paying Marcus Mariota. What's fascinating is they also have Jameis Winston, which, by the way, was a signing that I low-key liked for them. Maybe they want a more responsible veteran to be with a potential rookie if they do indeed draft a rookie. Maybe they are looking what the Titans are doing and they have some kind of intel on Cleveland. They know they're not getting a quarterback at 3, or they know they don't want Shador at 3. So there's a lot of different ways you could take this news. I just think it's pretty interesting because you now have like the most risk-averse quarterback in the league in Jameis, one of the riskier guys in risk-averse in Russ, very, very risky in Jameis, who I think kind of fits Brian Dable's style. And like, hey, coach, you want me to go throw the ball to Malik Neighbors 20 times a day? Fine, Jameis will do it. I don't know that Russ will, although Russ will throw those deep balls to him. I don't know, man. It's an interesting deal that they're doing in New York. And I do find it hilarious that both Steelers quarterbacks were like, I know where we want to go, the Jets and the Giants. And now the Steelers are going to be stuck with Aaron Rodgers or no one.
Yeah, I mean, bringing in Russ, I think from what they already have and what they're, still continuing to build, I think they just want to be, somewhere in the middle kind of thing. Like maybe they want to be in a situation where they feel as though they are a quarterback away, and maybe this year they don't land that quarterback. But I feel like if you continue to build up the defense, build up the offense,
if you're
I don't think
Shane
they're taking
and Dable, you're doing this to save your job.
Exactly.
Man, Russ can do enough. Russ or
Exactly.
Jameis, if you find one of them on a hot streak for 5 weeks, and frankly, like those two guys are terrifying. Like if you're the Commanders, like playing them's not going to be fun. It could be real fun because Jameis could throw you 4. Russ might throw you a couple. He's only so dangerous at this point in his career. But
no pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, dang man. It's I mean, if I'm long-term cohesive planning is not seem to be what the Giants are doing, unless they're just trying to accumulate a bunch of stuff till they luck into a quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. If you were them at 3, are you taking a quarterback?
No,
taking the best player available.
Yeah, because assuming that Ward goes 1, either Hunter or Carter is going to be available, and I'm not taking Shador over either of those guys.
Yeah. And if you really want to, you can trade up to Washington to get that,
Yeah,
29th
if
pick.
you want to take a Jackson Dart or a Jalen Miller, I mean, shoot, with Dable, with
No,
the
he
success he
better
had with
not.
John Allen
He
or
better
Josh
not.
Allen, I would take Jalen Milroe, maybe not the second, but like the third.
Yeah, I would take him in like day 2.
He ran a 4.37, bro. Like
I understand
if
that,
I can
but
if I can teach that guy how to play quarterback with the physical tools he has, and I can sit him behind Russ and Jameis for a year, 2 guys that are bona fide and like borderline NFL starters. Like, there are worse environments for him to be in. And maybe that's the plan, is like, we just got to create a good quarterback room. And Jameis is a wackadoodle and Russ is his own kind of wackadoodle. But, like, the 2 dudes have thrown a lot of touchdown passes in the NFL.
I feel like people critique or criticize Jalen Hurts and how long it took him to, finally be able to, throw the ball down the field. Jalen Milroe isn't remotely what Jalen Hurts was coming out of college from a throwing tactical standpoint.
Very different player. I mean, Jalen's accuracy, Hurts' accuracy has always been incredible.
Yeah, but Milroe,
a little more of a shotgun approach. How much time do we have left in the show?
We have not a lot of time.
Oh,
about a minute actually. A minute and 6 seconds, 5 seconds, 4 seconds.
So 56-15.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so we have 1 minute left in the show right now. Anthony, you put up on your Instagram, what kind of Packer are you? You put up a poll question because you're leaving us. You're going on vacation the rest of the week. How ahead of time do you pack before you leave?
Well, I haven't packed yet, Craig.
You're the late packer in this.
Yes, I am the last minute. I'm the guy that will be up in the wee hours of the night and may only get 1 to 2 hours of sleep. And
so stupid. You could just go home and get it done and then sleep like a normal person.
Yeah, but sometimes I operate under stress. I don't know why, but I just do. Even sometimes when I wrote papers in college, I will wait.
Sometimes deadlines spur action. I get it. Look, here's my stress. Is my wife going to be stressed? Because she's a planner. And so for me, I got to make sure she's not stressed. So I pack on her time, and then we're ready to go.
Smart man.
Yeah. Find yourself someone who gets you on a schedule.
Exactly.
That's my advice. Marriage, everybody. Making sure that you don't mess life up. All right, that's our show. See you tomorrow, except for Anthony.